So welcome to the 145 Cyber War and Peace talk, today given by Chris Sumner. Chris started his career back in the dark ages of 1999 doing security management for a Fortune 100 company. Moved from there. Chris began to work personally on data visualization, and as you'll soon hear, actually has an interesting story about Tony Hawk, so I thought that was pretty cool. Today he'll be talking about using data visualization tools in social networks. So please join me in welcoming Chris Sumner.
Thanks very much. Can everyone hear me all right? Just want to make sure before I get started, because I'm using this mic thing here that lets me walk around. All right, we're good. All right, so thanks for the introduction. I'm Chris Sumner. I started my career a little longer ago than 1999, but got into security full-time around then. So first of all, thanks for coming today. There's another talk about ATMs, and so I'm pretty stoked that we've got such a big audience, actually. Thanks very much. So my talk today is on social networking and data visualization and extending data visualization tools to enumerate social networks maybe a little bit quicker than by hand or in a non-visual way. Before I start, I've got a disclaimer that I need to share. I'm speaking for myself, not as part of my company, so if anybody knows who I work for, then it's important that at least let you know that this is, on behalf of me, doesn't reflect the opinions of the organization for which I work. So what are you in for today? First of all, we're going to start with a brief introduction to social network analysis and a brief intro to visualization, about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll go pretty quick. There's a white paper with a lot of the science behind it available. Then going to take a look at a case study with Twitter and a tool called Maltego, and then finally we'll wrap up with a case study that's a little bit darker, involving Nigerian 419 crime versus Maltego. So the goals of the talk today really, I guess firstly it's to share what I've been doing at a high level and give you some appreciation of the possibilities of data visualization in this kind of field. So hoping that some of you will go, oh, that's pretty neat. I can apply this in slightly different contexts, and maybe encourages folks to go and explore a lot of the data that's out there, so that you can apply it either in a work situation or for analyzing networks yourself. So who's the talk aimed at? I just want to be clear on this in case people are coming who've already got a significant level of data visualization knowledge or a significant level of social networking data mining knowledge. So really, if you fit into this category, you should be in for a good time. I can't promise that, but see me afterwards if it wasn't. If you fit into the next category here, where you're either really experienced, or you've had some good experience with data visualization or with social networking analysis, then you may get some crossover and see how you can use different techniques in kind of different way. And if you fit into the latter category, you probably get what I'm talking about already, but there may still be something in it for you. So that's really what who the talk's aimed at. So briefly, who am I? I'm Chris Sumner, but I signed up to Twitter last summer, and like a lot of people who sign up to Twitter, the name that you want has already been taken by somebody else. So I ended up choosing the Sugmeister because my nickname at school and forever since has been Suggy. And it's one of those things that I sort of kind of regret now, and never mind. So by day, I work in corporate security. Actually do program management around security development lifecycle, and outside of work, I'm interested in data analysis, not usually social networks, but looking at large data sets. visualizing that to help me understand a little bit more about the data at a high level before drilling down. And since last year, really got into social media in a pretty big way, and also a DEF CON chapter called DC 4420 in London. A quick note, if if you've not been to a local DEF CON chapter, really worth going. It's like bite-sized bits of DEF CON throughout the year, so you don't get that post-DEF CON depression thing going on, if you get that like I do. And a strange sequence of events led me to appearing here, so you'll obviously see why shortly. Okay, the introduction piece, social network analysis. A target-rich environment is either a problem or an opportunity, depending on which side of the table you're looking at it from. Social network analysis has been around really since the Greeks, but this guy here, Jacob Marino, was pretty widely credited of being sort of the originator of this diagram, which you'll be pretty familiar with by the end of the talk, this kind of thing. So that was published first in the New York Times in 1933, and really he sort of led the field in understanding the dynamics of social networks. So a little bit more about that in the white paper. And then a target-rich environment. This was something that I kind of figured would be the case, but had never actually looked into until I decided to submit a paper for the talk. I read a report that was out this year or late last year by Cisco, stating that there was something like 21 exabytes of data flowing around the world per month. And the amount of data that's available now, that's sort of personal information, photographs and stuff, is just like exploding. So you're getting more and more data out there from more and more people, which is pretty interesting if you like exploring data. I should probably get out more, but so Facebook recently, actually, if you look at the white paper, it says 350 million users, and then before I got here, it said it's hitting 500-ish million users. Of course, some people may have more than one account, although that's sort of forbidden, but such is life. Then there's something else interesting. There's a bunch of studies that have been going on. Stanford have done quite a lot on this, looking at what people say and actually what people do. So I kind of termed this the privacy paradox, and it's where the students interviewed mostly said, yeah, I take privacy very seriously, yet when they analysed the behaviour of these students on social networks like Facebook, they did the opposite of what they said they'd want to do. So, for example, 89% used their real name. 61% have an identifiable photo online, and so on. I mean, recently, a lot of the privacy concerns around Facebook. A lot of people are still what I'd term promiscuous. They'll be friends with anyone, they'll post anything up there. I mean, it's a data miner's dream, actually, and I'll talk a little bit more about that because there's some seriously cool stuff going on in this space. And then finally, so my personal favorite really, there's a great paper. It's a pretty big paper by a guy called Daniel Solov, and called I've Got Nothing to Hide and Other Misunderstandings of Privacy. And that kind of goes along with the whole privacy paradox of people putting more and more stuff out there. So we've got social network analysis, and now we've got a target-rich environment. So previously, when the Greeks were looking at this sort of stuff, it was all by hand, and now obviously you've got a great stack of data available that you can explore very, very quickly, as we'll see a little bit later. So what's the problem? Well, your searches, your online activity isn't all that anonymous, essentially, and that's probably not a great surprise to anyone in the room. But there was the case of this lady, Thelma Arnold. I won't read the AOL number, but in a roughly 2006, AOL published a bunch of their sort of search strings, and I think it was the New York Times. They must be into social analysis. they'd actually gone taking a look at the data for this AOL user 4417, what have you, and they determined that it was this lady in Georgia, this Thelma Arnold, because of the searches that she was looking at, because she was looking at dog kennels and stuff like that. For you can see she's got a dog. So all of this stuff that's out there, this I've got nothing to hide, what could possibly go wrong, isn't all that anonymous. Even if the data is anonymized and your real name's taken out, it's still highly possible for people to link that back to an individual. So we've got a lot of data, and you've got a lot of noise. Really the opportunity here is how do you find the interesting stuff just a little bit quicker, and you can do that, as I hope to show today quickly, is by data mining, techniques like screen scraping. I don't know if anyone saw the Michael Schrenk talk at DEF CON last year. If you didn't, go onto the archives and have a look at that, because that's an absolutely fantastic talk around obtaining data through screen scraping. Obviously you've got to be aware of the robots.txt and what have you. Named entity recognition and data visualization. I'll talk just briefly about those two right now. So named entity recognition is really parsing data to extract and classify information. It differs from sort of meta-analysis because it classifies the data and not one particular type. Very similar, but slight different. So here's an example. Greg bought 300,000 shares of Legat, completely random idea here, in 2010, and this is what it ends up looking like. This is kind of the example was pretty much from Wikipedia, but now what you can see here is that you've almost got sort of an XML format where it's picked out the name, a quantity, an organization, and a date. So at a very high level, that's what it's like. Have a Google around for named entity recognition. You'll see a lot of stuff from the University of Stanford and the University of Illinois, and there's some online tools, Open Calais, for example, that's got an API, so you can pass data to that and and use this. And we'll see a little bit more about the power of what you can do here. Data visualization. Quick show of hands, anybody read this book or familiar with a piece of software called Processing? Like a couple of people maybe. Processing, I mean, first of all, this book is fantastic. Ben Fry really has done a great job and outlines a process for data visualization, acquiring data, parsing it, filtering it, essentially getting your data into a neat, filtered form, and then rendering it, and then allowing you to interact with that model. So almost a three-step process: get the data, tidy it up, output it to some sort of file or XML, CSV, whatever, and then render it. So iterative. And he talks about that in this book and uses the processing software, which you can download, have a play with. It really is fantastic. But it's this last point really that I wanted to home in on, which is where you see a big gap in a number of tools out there, is interacting with the data. So the whole process of generating a data set and then interacting with the data and doing that in a sort of a loop means that you have to leave the graphical user interface, whereas what I'm going to talk about today shows you a tool where you don't necessarily leave the GUI. So for tools, there's a number of them. I just put a few on here. You could go on. There's a great website out there called secviz.org. It's got a whole bunch of tools on there. I picked a few that I liked and I played around with, but going to focus on Multigo. So the first question really is, well, what is Multigo? So I'm going to go through this bit pretty quickly because I'm going to talk about it and you'll get the idea through the rest of the talk. But briefly, it's a tool for information gathering and visualizing information in a graphical way. There's infrastructure components, and I'll show a quick example of that. So you can look at DNS records, IP addresses, URLs, mail records, what have you. And there's a human part where you can look for mentions of people, telephone numbers, and what have you, and link all of those sorts of relationships together. I'll show you more about that, but this is just a quick snapshot. But the most exciting thing about Maltego is that it's extendable by design. So whatever you get out of it, just a quick show of hands actually, who's used Maltego? Oh, you will get this then, right? So it's extendable by design. So you can write your own what are called local transforms to go and do whatever it is you want. I'll talk more about that and show you what I did in our case study. So if you haven't used Maltego, here's where you go and get it. Perturva.com, written by a couple of guys in South Africa, Roloff and Andy Mohawk, great guys actually, been a very great help to me. And if you didn't know, there's a 25% discount during this sort of conference week if you type in the coupon code Black Hat at Maltego. There's a community edition which is kind of scaled down, but it'll let you have a play around with it. And there's also a full client version, which is usually about $430. So 25% off. So this is what the first screen is you're going to see when you sort of fire it up once you've got your license key and all of that. So completely. This is kind of what you'd see. So pick a domain. I know that the text is going to be small. That's not really that important. But I picked out 6 domains completely at random. So I went for legat.com, hightechhustler.com, securitygeek.com. But you can see it. What I wanted to do was briefly demonstrate what the tool allows you to do. So I figured it'd be neat to see out of these domains, who's sharing MX records. So you can see this. I've got Security Geek down at the bottom, which is my website, and then you've got a number of these other entities all sharing the same MX records from GoDaddy. Well, you can explore a little bit further, and actually last night I was playing around with this, looking at say the websites that are associated with those addresses, and then looking at the email addresses that were found on those websites, and then looking at the email addresses on those websites that appeared on other websites, and you could see interesting relationship, because a lot of the email addresses listed on all of those sites also appeared on attrition.org. So if you knew nothing about what's been going on, at least on Twitter, with regards to discussion around Legat, you'd have spotted that relationship pretty quickly. So moving, I guess, neatly on to Twitter. I mentioned it. I sort of joined Twitter about a year ago. Started following 2 people initially. One was Ryan Russell. He's a pretty interesting guy, and another chap was this guy here, Tony Hawk, a US skateboarder. So what Tony likes to do, I didn't follow him for this reason. I found that out while I was following him on Twitter. He likes to get skateboards that look a little bit like this, with his sort of signature on it, that hopefully one of you is going to take away today. He likes to basically hide them and send out tweets with clues as to where he's hidden these things around the world. And he was doing this thing. He was starting this event, a worldwide Twitter hunt. He said, I need some trustworthy volunteers. Send me a tweet of where you live and why I should trust you. So I thought, well, I've not got anything to lose, right? Apart from 140 characters, I'll send him a tweet and say, I'm in London and you can trust me because I'm a gentleman, or what have you. On cyberspace, you can be a gentleman and nobody knows, right? So to my surprise, I got selected, and he's like, okay, we're going to send you a package, and the deal is that you'll hide it somewhere in the UK, and you'll send us a clue as to where you've hidden it, and we'll tweet that clue out. Tony will tweet that clue out to all of his followers. So at this point, I was pretty amped, as you are, sort of childhood hero, and I'm pushing 40. I really should be a little bit more mature than this, but I was really stoked, and my wife was actually pretty stoked as well, but for different reasons. She'd seen Tony's house on MTV Cribs, and thought that was a really nice house, and I was just like, well, you know, Tony Hawk Pro Skateboarder. So a colleague of mine, going by the name of Pat Udall, was like, okay, Chris, let me get this straight. You know, you work in security, you've been a security manager. Some dude on Twitter who claims to be Tony Hawk is going to send you a box to an address that you gave him, and you're going to hide that somewhere in the UK. No problems there whatsoever. It's at that point where I was like, yeah, maybe I should look for another career, actually. I'm clearly not cut out for this, you know. And the other day, actually, he was saying, yeah, just think about it. You've got a whole another angle for your talk, really. Look how easy it is if you want to get people to do something. You know, you don't have to pay them or anything. You just pretend to be someone, send them a box, get them to hide it somewhere, job done. So I was a little bit paranoid. But I was like, no, it really is Tony Hawk. He's verified by Twitter. Is anybody here from Twitter, by the way? But if you are, I'd like to buy you a really big drink. No one. That's a pity. So I went ahead with it anyway, because I figured, well, you know, yeah, it's got to be real. He's on Twitter and he's got the little blue tick. So what, you know, it's got. So this is the box that was sent to me in the post. So I sent this clue to Tony, which I thought was pretty awesome, actually. So, guarded by a fearsome troll, northwest from a house where you might have to pay money to pass and a skateboard park. So, the money to pass house, the toll house, there's a toll house near where we live. If you go northwest, you pass a skate park, and where it might be guarded by a fearsome troll, but under a bridge. So I thought, oh, awesome clue, bridge. It occurred to me that people might spot a package and think that, okay, it's some sort of, somebody's, you know, from a terrorist cell is trying to blow up one of the most important bridges in the village. Yeah, I had some concerns about that, but I went about it anyway and sent the clue out. Now, this guy here, is a bit of a legend, actually. He'd been following Tony Hawk as well and was really more excited than I was that there was going to be this Twitter hunt in the UK. So he actually drove up in the morning to Basingstoke, the town where I live. Yeah, Basingstoke. And he camped out basically all day waiting for Tony to send this tweet. I mean, I could have actually gone and taken the board to London. So there he is, camping out in his car. And eventually, after an epic quest, he found it. I'd took the liberty of adding a little bit of camouflage to the package so that random dog walkers wouldn't find it. So that was his tweet there, camo netting, you're a bad man. But as you can see, he was really amped to get the Tony Hawk package. And this is what was in it. I added the UK flag because, well, I felt like it. Oh, and somehow the hackersforcharity.org sticker got on there too. Tony likes hackers. So I, obviously, we've all established I'm on Twitter, so I've got a life. I wanted to see a map of where all of these packages went, who hid them, and who found them. So I thought that would be a fairly straightforward thing to do on a nerdy Sunday afternoon. I thought, right, well, all of the people like myself who hid decks were all friends on Twitter with the @HidingIt account. The finders all were meant to tweet, "I found one," when they found one. So that should be easy to find, easy to analyze as well. And Tony sends out "found" wherever by whoever with the hashtag THTH. So there's a problem with that. Not all of the hiders were friends of hiding it. Some of them were Tony Hawk's personal friends. Almost none of the finders actually followed the instructions. They all put the USB stick that came with the package in their computer, but none of them followed the instructions. And Tony himself really didn't follow his own instructions either. So skateboarders, what are you going to do? So I thought, right, I'll reach out to Twitter because I don't know about you guys, but instead of doing Google stuff now I ask Twitter. You get a nice varied response from that. So I asked, does anybody know of a quick way to get information out of Twitter? Nobody mentioned search because I should have looked at that. So see previous comment about needing to find another career. And I got a response from this guy who's part of, turns up to the DC 4420, the DEF CON chapter meetings. And he said, Maltego can do that. And I'm thinking, yeah, Maltego, what's that? So, we had some discussion. He said, it's data visualization. Go and have a look. Oh, data visualization, awesome. How did I not know about this? Brilliant. So I downloaded Maltego, had a bit of a look at it. I thought, right, so here's my hypothesis, which, for the record, my hypothesis for anything, generally, disregard it. I figured that the hiders and the people that found the skateboards would have some sort of social interaction, like, hey, congratulations, I hid the board, or something like that. And I thought by finding those interactions socially, I'd be able to arrive at a Google map, and that would be a piece of cake. So I started off by getting a list of the hiders in Twitter with Maltego. So I whizzed through this a little bit, but give you some idea of what we did. So first issue that you've got is that you have to derive what's called an entity. These things here are entities. So you started off with a phrase. It's called a phrase. And I typed in at hiding it, which you can see sort of arrowed up there. And then when you right click on that, you get a number of options that are particular to the entity that you've got. And one of them was, searching Twitter. So this is what a transform looks like, a built-in transform. That means it comes with the tool. You can look at all of the tweets that have the phrase at hiding it in there. So I did that, and you get a bunch of these things called twit affs, or Twitter affiliations. They look like purple prickly things. I think now in version 3 of the tool there's a different logo, but you get the idea. So these are tweets actually, essentially, and from there you can convert that to well, the previous ones were twits. Actually, this is how you convert the tweet to an actual person, or Twitter affiliation, as it's called in Maltego. So you right click on that and then do that conversion, and you can select that for the whole array of people. So you don't just do it for one at a time. You can just select that whole bunch, and eventually then you'll arrive here with a Twitter node, a Twitter affiliation entity. So that's basically how to derive the node. It's in the white paper, sort of step by step, so if you want to experiment with it. The other way you can do it, which is highlighted by the red box in the corner, is sort of take one that you've already had and sort of modify it. That tends to work as well, at least for Twitter. So now, we can get going, actually, really start and take a look at, well, who are the friends of at hiding it. So again, you've got this concept of a transform, and you're looking at the friends of this person, and you can generate that, get a nice big list with little thumbnails of what the people look like, and then you can perform that operation on all of them people again. So you can select there's 83 there, you have to trust me on that. You can select all 83 and run the same transform on all 83 people. So I picked me. That's me right there. And if you see the top right-hand corner, there's a little red red box. That gives you the ability to navigate. So if you've got big graphs, you can navigate around the graphs using that box, and then home in on it in the screen in the middle. So I wanted to see all of the tweets that I wrote. I'm only showing you one. I could have applied that transform to every single entity at the same time. So I did that, and then that's when I noticed that things weren't happening quite as I expected. So I'd get like 12 results, but I know I'd tweeted about, I had 50 or something tweets. So I was like, well, what's going on? This is kind of weird. Actually quite a lot of exploration on why that was weird. And I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm relatively new and not that interesting. So I'll try, Tony Hawk. So, I looked at his tweets, nothing at all. So I emailed the guys in South Africa who wrote the tool. By now, they must have been thinking, I wish this English guy would just go away. And they tried to reproduce it and had the same challenges, and digging a little bit deeper, we noticed that Twitter has got some limitations in search. So it's pretty well documented, out there. What Twitter search was, the API came from another organization called Summarize, and it indexes, or maintains the index at least, for about 2 weeks, roughly. And some people aren't indexed at all, so the challenge I had was Tony Hawk wasn't indexed at all, and I was only getting the tweets that I'd written in the last 2 weeks. So a bit of a challenge there, and that is where this thing came in handy, because Roloff, the guy who essentially set up Perturba from SensePost, he said, dude, you should try local transforms. You can write your own code. I'm thinking, you've got the wrong guy here. I don't write code, play around with Perl now and again. He said, but if you can write, if you can call a script or a program, and you can pass it input, and you can generate output to standard output, then you can write a local transform, which was pretty interesting and compelling. So I set about it by thinking, right, well, I'll try this with Perl and have a look at the Twitter API. Now, I bought this book, but actually I didn't really use it that much, because there's a huge set of Twitter API documentation online, which you can search for. But it's not one API, it's 3 APIs. So forget the search API that we mentioned from Summarize, and just focus on the other REST API, which allows you to use commands, calls like this essentially. And this is where you'd be, extracting the tweets from somebody. And you've got an entity value there, which is the person that you're looking to grab the tweets from. If anybody wants the code for playing around with this sort of stuff, I plan to just put it on on my website, which is Security Geek, but the E's are 3s. So you can do a lot of playing around with that. It's not all plain sailing either. There are some things which I wish were implemented in the Twitter API that aren't, like searching by date and stuff like that. You kind of have to make that yourself. But Perl and LWP, really work pretty well. So there's a couple more gotchas here as well, though. You've got this 200 tweet limit. So when you run the API call, you'll get 200 tweets back. So if you want to look at 400 tweets, for example, that's 2 API calls. Well, that was an issue. You couldn't search by date, so I couldn't say I want to get all of the tweets between these dates. I had to derive the dates by looking. Each tweet has got an ID associated with it, and you can see a time. So you pull a tweet with an ID, look at the time, and and then sort of figure out, well, let's say there's X, go to another tweet ID, guess that, say, okay, well, this is between 2 dates. That kind of works. But there's a maximum history. I haven't actually tested how rigid that is, but 3,200 tweet history, and you're limited to 150 API calls per hour by default. So as you can see, if you've got 100 people, which is quite easy in a graph like this because you're exploring vast sets of data and you're running those transforms on all of those people. In this rather small example here, you'd have 100 people I'd be looking at making 3 API calls per person and end up with 300 API calls. That's already blown my my limit with Twitter, so I'd have to do that over 2 hours. And that's where whitelisting comes in. You can go from 150 API calls to 20,000 in an hour. So you have to apply for that via Twitter, but they were pretty good with that. Said, I'm a security consultant and looking into data analysis and what have you, and I'd like to be whitelisted, please. I thought that'd take forever, or I'd get a no, and and they said, yeah, sure, here you go, basically, which then meant that I could run some pretty large graphs. So okay, back to the story. I wanted to see who'd actually won these won these skateboards. So what I did, I picked out Tony Hawk, and then I ran the tweet, the transform that I'd written to pull out the tweets of people he mentioned here. So these are all of my local transforms: get, tweet, 1, 2, and 3, and they'd search between certain IDs and pull out all of the tweets that had either the word found in there or had an at mention. So Twitter usernames are at username, so you can pull them out with a regular expression really easily. And basically I'd display those and discard everything else that he'd written. So I wasn't particularly interested in what he'd had for breakfast, but I was interested in if he was corresponding with someone through Twitter. So this is what it ends up looking like. So for example, one of those, that one on the top left-hand corner there, was found Atlanta, blah, 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 basically. And that would have been a similar story for each of those. So potentially in that set of data are the people who won these skateboards. As you go a little bit further and run more of those transforms on a wider and wider data set, then you can start to see relationships building between these people, who's spoken to who. In this case, you'll see Tony's talked to a few people, and those people have also been people that were hiding stuff, so there's some relationship obviously there. And as you go further, then the map gets a little bit more complex if you're looking at it closely. Top right hand corner to navigate again is a great way of tackling that, and you end up with one of these, which is a big graph. I decided I'd have a bit of a go at running more and more transforms. So I set off a transform on a big data set and went out running. About halfway around like a 6 mile loop, it occurred to me that this was all happening on some servers in South Africa, and they might be getting a little bit pissed off. So I ran back home pretty quickly and saw this. And you can't do a lot with a map like that, really. So what you need to do is prune that, basically, and you can look for entities that don't correspond with anybody else and just cut them out. So pruning your data set is a sort of big activity in Maltego, but you can get that then down, and you can get a pretty nice graph. And here you can see you've got at hiding it is the dot at the top left-hand corner. You've got Tony Hawk, you've got somebody following at hiding it, you've got somebody who Tony's mentioned, and you've got some correspondence between those two. So there's something going on there, and you can explore them and just end up with a data set of people who've been communicating. There's another view here that you'll see in Maltego, and just to highlight where the lines are there, you can see pretty much the same sort of thing again. If you're looking at, or I guess right now you might be thinking, well, how does this speed things up? Well, you apply edge weighting, then you can see essentially who are the top talkers in that Twitter event, and here you'll see Tony Hawk, hiding it, and Jerome Case. But what on earth have I been going on about? Well, if you look here, then you'll see that there's me and there's this other guy, Stephen Gill, and there's Jerome Case. Well, Jerome Case, you might be scratching your head thinking, well, who's Jerome Case? Well, I didn't even know he had a Twitter account, and this guy was the guy that sent me the skateboard, Tony Hawk's sort of right-hand man dude. He's got a Twitter account, he's tweeting, And you know, before I used this graph, I didn't know that. It hadn't occurred to me to look. So if you're analysing an event, you can see perhaps who are the most interesting people at the event. So you could apply that here to, you know, to Black Hat, for example, or to DEF CON or what have you, and see maybe where the big buzz was without actually having to attend. So, you know, you don't need to be limited to Twitter. You can just search, you know, websites for names, for example. So this is what the guys look like. I'll put that in. So lessons learned, I've got 3 lessons learned. The first one, which the Perturba guys really instilled, was plan what you're doing, have an idea about how you're going to go about it before you go about it, otherwise you can generate a lot of mess. The next thing, if you're using Maltego, is if you've got this setting here, for speed and accuracy. If that bar is over to the left, you get less results, so it's good for testing out your transforms. And when you've got that working and you're happy with it, slide it across to the right. And if you're ever thinking, I'm not getting many results, what's going on, then it's probably because you've got that bar slid over to the left. And a third sort of slide with lessons learned is that these local transforms, you can apply these to a great deal more than Twitter, right? You know, you can apply them in any context. The guys at Perturba there have even analysed like a Spider-Man movie, who's talking to who and what the relationships are there. If you're in an enterprise and you want to use this perhaps for, you know, vulnerability testing, pen testing, what have you, consider the server platform, so you're running transforms in your own enterprise. And if you're going to explore Twitter, then I'd seriously recommend taking a look at applying for whitelisting. So did it help me get a map? Sort of, but not really. My wife was expecting our first child, so what we ended up doing was we went to the hospital waiting for the chap to arrive, took a bunch of printouts and stuff like that, and did it all by hand in the end, because I totally failed and ran out of time. But you could see some of the relationships, but this was what we ended up doing in the end, so I just wanted to come clean with that. But I don't know how many of you have seen this, because this is a similar concept, but using processing by a guy called J.R. Thorpe. If you've not seen this, go Google around for Just Landed. The concept here was that people on Twitter, you know, saying, oh, you know, I just landed in Las Vegas, wheels down Las Vegas, you know, made it to Las Vegas or what have you. So what he did, he analysed, he got the Twitter profile of where they are, identified the location, used something called Metacarta, which pulls out the location and gives you a geographical grid reference, or, you know, and looked at where they'd landed and where they'd said they landed, so where the name was, passed that through Metacarta and got a grid reference, mapped that in processing, and generated this pretty neat visual of where people were going and flying to within a data set. So I talked about Maltego, but, you know, you can apply this with different tools. Also with Twitter, you know, I used the API stuff, and I'll share this. This isn't Digital Equipment Corporation; it's a disasters emergency charity in the UK, and they were looking at analysing their social media activity for the Haiti disaster. They wanted to see how many tweets they were making, how many of those tweets were being retweeted and stuff like that. So with those same API calls, I was able to apply that and generate these graphs. But if you're looking at that in a sort of more professional way, check out RowFeeder by a guy called Damon Cortese. It's a really sweet product. So onto another use case, really, probably focus a little bit more on the Nigerian crime aspect here, rather than Maltego just. But this guy's pretty famous in Nigeria. He's wrote a song basically about 419 scamming called "I Go Chop Your Dollar," and he's pretty popular. So I got involved with this because a friend lost a laptop to a scam on a certain auction site, and wanted to, well, work with the police and try and, get the laptop back, basically. Well, I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK, the police are quite disjointed in their approach to this sort of thing. So depending on who you call first, your crime log can get held up. So if you ever send anything to a legitimate address, better to try and call the police in that jurisdiction rather than your local one. I explain a little bit more. So quick disclaimer, some of the names, dates, images and stuff have been changed to, basically so I don't get bumped off on the way home. So this is my friend who lost her laptop. She put it on an auction site. This actually sequence of events is pretty common for scammers right now, but I'm sure they'll move and migrate, get a little bit better. It got bought quickly at the buy now price. So that's sort of maybe a telltale giveaway that you're about to get scammed. She exchanged emails with the buyer, and it seemed okay at least. She'd actually gone to check that the address she was sending it to was a valid address, and it was. So she was, a little bit skeptical. And then she got a notification from PayPal, except it wasn't from PayPal at all. And then she got a notification from, she sent the laptop to a valid address, and then she got a notification that the account that she'd been dealing with at the auction site had been compromised. So it was then that it dawned on her that, she'd just sent this expensive package to a valid address, and began panicking a little bit, and contacted the police. And because she knew I worked in security and had a relationship with the police locally, she asked if there was anything I could do to point her in the right direction, or point the police in the right direction to people that could help. So another hypothesis is, I thought, well, if you've got the scammer dude, and you've got the address that they sent the package to, then it should be possible to get reacquainted with the laptop and hopefully ensure that justice is done. Notice that there's no cake there. So first of all, where is our scammer? So my initial thought was, well, the first thing I want to do is get the IP address and see if they're based in the UK or something like that. So the trouble was, scammer uses web-based mail, so getting headers was somewhat of a challenge. But I figured that this might be a reasonable approach. So you can sign up for a free blog site with logs and post an image up there, let's say. Then you can send the spammer an email. It's a rather compelling email, like, hey, I've got this other laptop, do you want to check this out? And embed that in the email. They click on the email, and essentially after some time you'll get the IP address from which it came. Now you might also want to go and see Jeremiah Grossman's talk, because I think he's talking about some browser exploits that you can use that'll pull out data from from the sort of the auto-populate form thing. Go see his talk. I've not seen it, but that's what I'm reading. That'll give you things like first name, last name, all sorts of interesting stuff. So we got the IP address, but if you see what he's doing, maybe there's more you can do. And unsurprisingly, the IP address turned out to be in this place, Lagos in Nigeria. So it's like, yeah, okay, there's definitely, it's gone to a legitimate address in the UK, but whoever the scammer is either routing his traffic through Lagos or is there, and I figured that it probably actually is there. So we had NS as the Nigerian scammer, He also likes American comedians, and he was going by the alias of Larry the Cable Guy or something like that. Had an email address, and then we knew that the package had gone to somebody called Alice, who's based in a town in the UK called Newcastle. I don't know in the US if you've got a site like this, but 192.com enables you to put in names of people, and it will give you the addresses that they not only live at, but the previous addresses they've lived at, and a whole bunch more other information. So I thought, we'll put the name of that person in, it will show that they live at that address, you know, and who else they live with, and, you know, so job done. But it didn't work because the person who was at that address had probably been renting, so you didn't get the real name. So that initial approach failed. Then figured, well, just some information gathering on Google, see where these people have got profiles. So Bebo, MySpace, and of course Facebook. A whole bunch of stuff out there. So I thought, well, maybe have an explore with Maltego. So this guy here, Dominic White, or @Singe on Twitter, has wrote some really useful Facebook transforms for Maltego. Facebook have got it in their terms of services, not to do this. So I want to be, clear about that. But he's got some, and they're published out there. Written in Python using mechanized and beautiful soup to interact with Facebook. So I figured, okay, let's take a look at that, and we got 3 results back for Alice. Actually, we got a whole lot more results back for Alice, but you don't need to see that because the purpose is really just to show you the approach we took. So, but which one is the real Alice? Well, did a transform of Facebook to Facebook friends and saw, that she had a number of friends. They all had a number of friends, and then it was like, yeah, but which one's the real one? Let's take a look at the location of those people. So ran a cobbled together transform which identified the location based on their Facebook profile as being, here you'll see that she had a lot of friends in Lagos and a lot of friends in Newcastle. So it was a good chance that that was going to be the person out of all of the Alices that we were looking for. So an awful lot of stuff in the public profile as well. So you could actually get quite a lot of information, and it certainly looked like this was our man, well, our lady. So at this point, I mentioned that, Facebook, terms of service, do read them. There's this guy here, Pete Warden, who's done, I don't know how many people are familiar, but this blew my mind actually. He built his own sort of Facebook profile search engine, which was used a 100 machine cluster running Hadoop for about $10 an hour. And he crawled Facebook. This was, I think, maybe a year and a bit ago, something like that, and ended up obtaining 220 million profiles from Facebook in about 10 hours. It cost him about $100. So the ability to crawl and obtain vast data sets has never really been easier. But he ran into a lot of legal trouble with Facebook, and they're pretty clear. So really the talk is aimed at sharing this, particularly with folks in law enforcement who'd be able to, approach Facebook legitimately to do these kinds of searches. So don't go and do this without asking them nicely, unless you want to get on the wrong end of Facebook, who I think are a little bit more surly than Nigerian scammers even in terms of following up. So yeah, he got 220 million, which boggled my mind really. He did all sorts of analysis with it. Check out Pete Warden's website, and you can see some of the stuff he's done there. Amazing. So information available to all. So if folks have got, well, you guys probably know this, their privacy set to everybody, then bingo, you're in. You can crawl pretty much anything. Fascinating, and lots of people do that. If not, you can only do so much without being a friend, sort of. So how do we get to the good stuff in people's profiles? Well, there's a couple of ways you can approach this. So the Social Zombies talk that's been at DEF CON, ShmooCon and whatnot, you can create bad applications, Facebook applications, and get people to use them. And then you can use Facebook query language pretty well to obtain this data. So there's at least 2 talks on the Social Zombies topic. Go and check them out for ideas. Or you could make friends with people and then adopt Singer's approach with Python and Mechanize. And for that one, see Satan is on your friends list. And actually there's a talk later this afternoon, I think by Tom Ryan, might give some good ideas as well. Or you can follow this guy on Twitter. He's got a website as well, the Harmony guy. He's identified number of flaws over the last year and worked with Facebook. But if you're smart, there's probably other ways you can approach it. So I opted for an easy approach of sort of just making some new friends, really. So the idea here is that you'd create a credible account, and again, take a look at the talk a bit later on tonight for maybe more about how you're doing that, and then build up your identity slowly, so you've got something credible, some interactions on your wall, photos and stuff like that. Don't go directly for your target, because they'll be like, somebody's trying to friend me who's got nothing on their sort of Facebook profile, and they've got no friends. So the approach is really join sort of groups, universities, schools, similar to ones that your target has got, friends of friends, and then finally home in on your target. If they've got over 1,000 friends, and a lot of people have, then basically they're easy, and they'll friend anyone. So they're great targets. I also found that demographically, at least between the UK and Nigeria, Nigerians at least that I made friends with were a lot more eager to become friends than people in the UK. And take your time. So I think the talk tonight will show how this was done over like 28 days. I didn't have 28 days, so and I wasn't really that bothered about being noisy or not. So I basically went through all that in about 2 hours. And it still worked, much to my surprise. If you're impatient like me, it can work. So you can automate this as well. If you've seen the tool iMacros by iOpus, it was in Michael Schrenk's talk last year. Go and have a look at it, it's brilliant. But you need to be careful on how quickly you're adding friends and stuff like that, especially like on Twitter, because if you see something adding friends at a rapid rate of knots, then you'll get your account suspended and you have to wait for ages, and then you'll have no friends when you get back and stuff like that. Okay, making friends, with people on Facebook. So this was one of the responses I got, at which point I thought, I've been busted, basically. So I said, I'm a friend of Alice's, just getting started with Facebook because I didn't have a lot on there. I might have added a few too many people or something, sorry. And that was it, basically. Alice is my best friend, so yeah, we're cool. Brilliant. So, that was pretty much how it went. Only a few people ever came back and said, hey, do I actually know you? And, usually, yeah, that worked most of the time. Or you could see parties that they'd been to on their Facebook profiles and whatnot. So, yeah, I was at this party, but I was a little bit drunk, so I might have got your name wrong. So this was how I went about getting a map of interesting peoples. Get the friends in, this is essentially the pseudocode for running your sort of Maltego approach. Get the location. If the location is sort of Nigeria, Lagos, and a bunch of other Nigerian places, then scrape or parse the wall posts, download them, download photos. If the wall posts contain interesting phrases and you get to see a lot of those, then download those. And if they basically tick any of those flags, then pipe them back into Maltego and add them to the map. So like we did with the Tony Hawk thing, where we just wanted the tweets where he'd said, in his name, we just wanted the interesting people back from Maltego that may have had something to do with being a Nigerian scammer. So, this is essentially what it looks like. Get friends with people. You'll see a big map start to emerge. You do that multiple times, you end up with something a little bit more like this. The bigger dots are more interesting, so you do a bit of pruning that we mentioned, the small dots at the bottom of the UK people, and you end up with a relationship that looks a little bit more like this. So the big dots are the major players. They're all interconnected around the edge and connected between themselves, and then they got people that they connect to in the middle. So the idea here is that you can then start drilling down on these people and exploring further. So he'd get interesting Facebook updates like 7K in 5 days, which was kind of interesting. Looking through the profiles, it's easy to see that these guys are, living a high life out there in Nigeria, and who can blame them with fast money and fast chicks and stuff like that. They had lots of photos, a little bit like this one. That's not actually a PS3, but you get the idea, on their wall posts and what have you, and they're very keen on sharing their wins, let's say. Lots of pictures of Western Union, celebrating with champagne and what have you. More screenshots of stuff on Western Union. Seems to be popular with Nigerian scammers, I should say, because that wouldn't be fair on the rest. So it's compelling. Why do they do it? You can see that they can make an awful lot of money here, $700 to $6,000. This was a Facebook profile as well. A wall post, let's go scam more people. These guys are communicating on Facebook very openly, and communicating with each other. So how about something a little bit more dodgy? Well, there were pictures a little bit like this, although not like this, because if you Google, a duffel bag with money, then you'll see where I got the image from. But there were similar images, let's say. Some of the images might have looked a little bit more like this. They got all of this money. It's all publicly available. You can go and check that out quite easily on their Facebook profiles. More wealth. So then things got a little bit more dodgy, and that's when I thought, well, actually, maybe I'll stop digging around and just leave this up to the professionals. They had pictures of guns, not this gun, but they had pictures of guns with the people who were in their sort of Facebook profile, so you could see names and faces, stuff like that. I was like, oh, that looks a bit serious. So obvious question in my mind was, well, are there links with terror? So I did some digging around, and if you're interested in Nigerian crime, a really interesting company, Ultrascan Advanced Global International, based out of Amsterdam, they do a lot of research into this sort of thing, got a lot of data on it, and they've got a 2009 report about scamming. Go and check it out. But they did actually identify direct relationships between 419 advanced fee frauds and terror. Before there was only indirect sort of slipstream money, and now there's direct links. So, okay, the true identity of our scammer. Let's say I was to set up an email address that was similar to the person who obtained the laptop in the UK. Send out a note saying, hey, this is Alice. This is my new email address. Would you believe it? Facebook's acting weird. Can you just send me a wall post? Because I figured that with all of the people that she was friends with, there'd be one of them would be our man, Larry the cable guy. So to my great surprise, he's like, yeah, sure. So sent a message back saying, thanks, hot stuff. Why not? And he then said, as a bonus, say hi to, XXXXX. So, oh, bonus, because I've seen pictures of Alice with XXXXX. I didn't know they were together. The conversation continued a little bit more, and it seemed like he does more of the dealing with XXS than with this Alice. So that was a bonus, really. So got a Facebook update like this, which was very similar to this, but not this. I was amazed. I was like, wow, that worked. Brilliant. So now we've got some more connections. You've got a connection now between Alice and the scammer in Nigeria, which we didn't have before. So this was, of course, interesting to the police who, had anecdotal evidence or had an idea that this was happening, but didn't have anything to actually tie it all, together. So then they had this link with this UK scammer who was also, closely related to Alice. And so what that actually happened is you've got, well, let me show you on the next slide, really. You've got scammer networks, so organised slightly. You've got 62 scammer networks in the UK alone, according to the Ultrascan International 419 report. And what they have is essentially a bunch of like cells in different countries who will then work with local people and use them as places where they, sort of ship their goods to, valid addresses, and they'll just, use this people and then burn them out and get more people. That's kind of how it works. Spain's got the highest number of scammer networks with 72, and the USA are trailing with 53, but don't feel bad about that, folks from the USA, because you've got more than double the amount of people than anybody else. You've got about 2,300 people make up those 53 sort of crime cells. So places with lots of Nigerian university societies, things like that, probably great places for targeting people. You've got 916 of these around the world, 16,000 members, and they're raking about $9.3 billion in 2009, so it's big business. People are falling for it all the time, and there's all sorts of different scams. Romance scams, people fall for that a lot, cars, that kind of thing. So, okay, so you've got the scammer, you've got the person that this went to in the UK, you've got a whole bunch of information. The police can't really do anything because they've got stuff that they're seeing on Facebook and difficult to prosecute and not so interested in, the people at the end. So how do you get your money back, basically? Well, what you could do, I suppose, hypothetically, is you could pile all of the information that you found and put it in a blog post, and also create maybe a Facebook fan site and encourage all of their friends to join. And then mention that, email the scammers and say, hey, just to let you know, I set this up, and, in a couple of days' time or something, Google will have indexed this and you'll never get rid of it very easily. You could do that, right, hypothetically. And then you could follow up with a call. I don't know about the US, but in the UK you can just buy SIM cards with cash. And agree some amicable terms, that could work. So, okay, yeah, we want to give you some money back. It's been a little misunderstanding. That's, how do you get the scammers' dollars into your bank? Well, cash obviously is going to be tricky, because where are you going to exchange the cash? Oh yeah, meet me here. Yeah, just be me, and don't bring anybody else, especially not those people with guns, because they kind of scare me. And then bank. Well, what do you do with the bank? Give them your bank account details. Not so smart, probably. PayPal, again, that would be linked to an individual, not a great idea. Western Union, you're going to have to give them a name or a fake ID or something, not a great idea. Probably the only one on that list that would make any sense if you were to do it, which I must stress I didn't, would be Amazon gift certificates, because you can get them then emailed to like just an email address, and nobody's any the wiser. Job done. You're limited to, what is it, $500 or something like that. That would probably be the only way you'd go to a scammer and say, actually, here's how I'd like my money back. Or you could say, just go to the police and hand back the laptop. We don't have the laptop. So, health warnings. I wouldn't recommend do it or completely, anonymize this. If you are going to do it, you're limited generally to public information. Read the terms of service, because Facebook are very tight on that. A wealth of information, but they're very tight. So really, law enforcement, or if you're in a corporation, go through legitimate channels. Friend up with your own account at your own risk. You'd need to be nuts to do that, really. But then setting up a second account would also be a violation of terms of service, so you perhaps wouldn't want to do that either. So maybe you could convince another friend who just happens to live in the same house as you with a different name to do that. Work with law enforcement and keep on the right side of where things are at. And if you wanted to do any of that, you'd have to break terms of service. So So wrapping up the talk, mining data has got more accessible than ever before. Visualization can help you home in. That's the key point, really, because you might be sitting here thinking, well, I can do all this stuff anyway, but it's going to help you home in on interesting relationships. And finally, things like getting the metadata or named entity recognition, that can help you really classify information. Combination of those three is going to speed things up. So, like I say, took me a couple of hours to get a bunch of friends, took a couple of hours to pull down a bunch of information, see where the interesting pictures were, go back, dive down into those, keep building it up the network. Following these people, this is all on the on the CD, and I'll put it on the website as well. If you're into Maltego, Perturba, obviously Singe, Mubix, and Carnal Ownage, these guys are pretty into Maltego. Social network folks, Tom Easton, he's not here. DigiNinja, those guys did Social Zombies. The Harmony guy I mentioned he did like a month of Facebook vulnerabilities last year, and social media security. Those are great people to follow and to check out. And then data mining, visualization. You've got Damien Cortese. He's the guy that does RowFeeder and what have you. You've got Neil Codner. I don't know if anybody has ever used Twitter and put in anything that's mentioned Full Metal Jacket. Well, if you do that, then you get the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket coming back at you with some aggressive language, and made me laugh actually out loud. And he's the guy behind that and does a bunch of other data mining stuff. And then Pete Warden, the guy who nearly got served by Facebook and escaped that by the skin of his teeth. Some great stuff there. So that's about all I've got to say about that, except that I've got a signed Tony Hawk skateboard here, and I don't want to take it home. I don't know, how should I do this really? Hands up who's on Twitter here or has got the ability to get on Twitter.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Should I give it him for asking nicely? What do you think?
Yeah, what the hell? What the hell?
What was that? Show of hands for who says yeah, give it him. So that's like 3. I'll hide it somewhere. You'll have to follow me at the Sugmeister on Twitter. Yeah, I'll hide it somewhere. It's going today. I'll tweet it out at some point in the next couple of hours, and have at it, people. Thanks, and any questions?